Alright, as you know, things are really picking up now, so let's have a look at what is going on in the world of Project Lambretta's bodywork. Last episode I got the toolbox lid into place, now time to get it fitting properly. As you can see from these pictures, the lid is way too far up and over to the left. Now this can only be remedied by moving the hinge, so drilling out the spot welds and snapping the hinge off, I can now get cleaning up the supplied rust. Now for mocking up the new lid position. You can see from these guide holes just how far out the hinge position was. With a smaller holding bolt fitted through those holes and tightened down, we've now got things fitting better. Breaking out the welder, I get some big plug welds into the drilled out spot weld holes. And now you can see we've got a good fitting toolbox lid. Time to clean it up. First a damn good grinding, then a smear of filler to hide the incriminating evidence. Now, if you're paying attention, you can also see just how battered that lid is under the inch of high build primer the manufacturer's layered on. Also in the background you can see the bridge piece that was all nice and shiny, which unfortunately didn't help hide the big ding on the side of it, so I'm going to pop a spatch of filler into that. In fact, now marks the point where I did quite a bit of filling, sanding, filling, sanding, filling, sanding, filling. The only point of interest in this broiling process was this nasty difference in gap sizes between the mudguard and leg shields. Sanding, filling, sanding, which I rather naughtily added a modicum of filler to. Sanding, filling, in an attempt to get a better mudguard fitment. Filling, sanding, like so. Filling, sanding, filling, sanding, filling, and finally a bit more sanding until I got this motley collection of filled body panels that were then given a squirt of edge primer. Next I'm going to fit these stainless straps from MB to give the frame a more authentic finish. Although I might go back to plastic zip ties, as these things are a bugger to snug up and make a smashing job of scratching the nice new powder coat. Now we get the PX toolbox onto the leg shields. I need to do this first as the new mounting bolt positions make it impossible to get the thing tightened down when the leg shields are fitted. Now on with the leg shields and time to get the floorboard runners and strips on. The runners are Casa items, but the strips are from my favourite awkwardly named brand SPAC. I presume these things are from the Far East as they're a bleeding awful fit. I'm going to need to do something about that. The Casa channels on the other hand line up nicely, albeit with a missing hole either side, so time to mark them up and get drilling those errant holes. And it's about this time I decided the standard slotted 4mm zinc plated fasteners supplied were just not going to cut the mustard. So I'm going to enlarge all but the upper out holes to 5mm and then get them bolted down with some stainless domed cap screws. Now, I'm also not happy with the supplied slotted bolts that come with the Casa end caps, so they're going to get drilled out and the countersunk is going to get some enlarging action as well. Happy with that, I can now get fitting the mudguard as it shares fasteners with the channels and end caps. Here you can see me struggling to get the new Casa gaskets fitted. I gave up on the seal ones as they look bleeding awful. With that in place and the channels bolted down, I can now slide the inner and then the outer runners into place and get those end caps tightened down. With those secured, I can feed the runners in at the channels along their entire length and work out where to cut the excess off. And with that removed, I can now tighten down the other end caps. Finally for the front, I'm getting the horn casting into place and then tightening it down. This needs to be done because I need to mark out the fixing holes for the leg shield beading end caps. I had welded up the original holes, and now with the new corrected positions marked out, I can get drilling the new ones. With that done, I can now fix the beading onto the top and run it all the way along the edge, down to where it should end at the beading strip clamp. With the clamp now in place, I can see where to cut the beading. And this is where you see my cunning plan for the edge strips, which was simply to grind out the offending bolts and gently thread on a 4mm nut onto the plastic dowel. I didn't want to use those one-way fasteners that are supplied, as I know they're a bugger to get off again. With that on, I can tighten down the clamp. To finish the front half, I've got these Lambretta toolbox rubber grommets fitted to the PX toolbox, and can now get the door on with these cheesy split pin hinges, which are a cow son to get in. I need to remove the fitter before mounting the toolbox and leg shields after the scoot's painted. Anyway, with them finally in, I've got myself a nice leg shield toolbox. Now to the back half. First things first though, I will need to have the exhaust correctly fitted. Before that I need to sort out the manifold itself, which has a bit of the inner pipe protruding, which I need to get sorted, or else all the porting and polishing of the barrel will have been a waste of time. After removing the springs, I can now mount the manifold into my vise and start to knock down the offending edge, and then give it a nice smooth finish with the Dremel. The next problem with the exhaust is the complete lack of space for this stud and its nut. The only fix will be to work out how much I can sensibly remove from the bottom half of the stud. With that marked out and the stud cut down, I can get the pair fitted into the barrel. The other parts I will need to fit to get the pipe on nicely will be the kickstart, which I fix like so. The other part that needs some modifications will be my converted barrel shroud, which it turns out needs some edges ground back to help in trying to get those fiddly exhaust manifold nuts wound on. With that carried out, I can now mount the exhaust, starting with a thin smear of exhaust sealer over the gasket and quickly get it into place, offering the whole exhaust up and holding it in place with a screwdriver. Now for the fun and games involved in faffing around and getting and fixing nuts and bolts into place. With that lot torqued down, I can now reattach the cylinder shroud properly and get the exhaust springs back into place. With the expansion system now in place, I need to make a quick check that the stand legs clear it. And we're ready to get on with more bodywork. With the floorboards in place with the anti-vibration rubs placed underneath, it's now back to the spec edge strips that just don't fit onto spec floorboards. Really? Oh well, in a last ditch attempt to get a black finishing kit onto my LI, I ordered a set of GP edge strips from Casa, which slip straight into place and line up perfectly with the LI front strips. Now I've gotten these pieces of the bloody puzzle together, I can get my now painted bridge piece bolted on, and then get the reworked toolbox lid fitted. Finally on with the side panels, and there we have it, all the bodywork in place. Blimey, that's almost looking like a scooter. But of course there's a few little bits and pieces needed before I can set off to the paint shop. With the bodywork finally fitted, I can now turn my attention to all those little problems I've been ignoring. The first of these is going to be finishing the front wheel by first fitting the correct length A2 bolts and stainless anti-turn washers to the brake rotor. Next up I need to replace this placeholder nut with a nice shiny new one which is the correct size. What's also been playing on my mind is the front brake caliper, the brake pads to be more precise. I was taught many years ago that to stop brake squeal you always smeared some copper slip on the back of the brake pads, and I was fully aware there was none on the pads fitted. So it's out with the pads and a nice coat applied, and then getting the whole lot bolted back together again. With the rotor and axle fasteners now attached, I can slip the wheel back in and get it tightened down. Another problem with the front end is the play between the offside damper and its upper mounting. Nothing serious, I'm just going to have to shave a spadge off the stud. To do this, I will need to get the damper off, again. This is fortuitous though, as it allows me now to finish the rotor fixings by unwinding the new bolts, adding a modicum of Loctite to the bolt threads, winding them back in again and torquing them up in order to the correct settings. Whilst here I can set about gluing the SIP speedo magnet to the brake rotor. After marking the position, I'm going to stick it on with some 2-part glue. With that done, the caliper gets tightened back up and I can switch my attention back to the dampers. Yet another problem with the damper fixings was how close the upper attaching socket cap heads were to the mudguard. To solve this, I simply use button head bolts. Dress bolts, I know, but the stainless items I'm using should be more than up to the task. With them in hand and a slither removed from the post, I get the dampers fitted and torque all the mounting nuts and bolts up. Followed by a splash of Loctite on the repurposed drain plug, and now I have a front wheel I'm happy with. Until it comes to the tracking, but I'm going to worry about that later. The next mission was to sort out these bleeding awful gaps and atrociously made gaskets. Only one way to fix these, and that's the same as the mudguard gaskets, which is throw the crap Indian products out and fit some new Casa parts. At this point you think I might have learned about using inferior parts, but these were purchased back when I was trying to keep to a budget. And well, now that's gone out the window, I might as well just use the best I can find. The struggle to get these in place was exactly the same as before, but at least I was happy with the end result. Next on my naughty list is the rear brake pedal. It's far too close to one side of the leg shield aperture, but I'm going to adjust that after I've gotten the bodywork painted, as this is one of those gaps I know will change when I refit the panel, so I'm going to wait until then. But for now, I'll just get this little grease nipple fitted into the mounting stud. I decided to slip on this Casa brake pedal cover because, why not? Now to something more important, the fuel hose. Starting off by soaking one end of the BGM hose in boiling water to allow it to slip over the carb inlet barb. And then tightening down the ASH hose clamp. With that tightened, I can feed the other end over the frame to the tank petcock. And now I can struggle to get that hose in place. And tighten the clamp there. With that fed, I can now set about getting the said petcock tightened up. My next problem really pissed me off. It's the fact the seat release lever scratches off the frame loop paint when pulled. Nice. After a lot of experimenting with various rubber buffers and stoppers, I finally found these little items in my local B&Q, which just happened to be exactly the right size for fitting between the seat and the catch to give me the clearance needed for the release lever, at least while it's new. So using blue tack to attach them to the seat in the correct, albeit on the piss position, I can now set about marking, drilling and bolting on these little buffers to give me a nice gap. I am aware after a while I will need to come up with a more substantial fix for this problem though. Anyway, on with my list, and next up is a problem that has vexed me since I first got the handlebars and brake levers. It was simply getting a protective grommet over the brake hose and brake switch wires to stop the two halves of the headset cutting through them due to the constant vibrations of a two-stroke motor buzzing away. Sounds simple, but finding a grommet with the correct dimensions and being long enough to pass through 2 layers of cast aluminium proved elusive. Undeterred, I dismantled the headset, again, and enlarged the hose hole to suit the grommet I was going to use till I could find one of the correct dimensions. As you can see, it's passable and will protect the hose and wires. Just looks a bit, I don't know, pony. Next is another part being fitted more for the sake of photography than actual use at this moment, and it's the PM tuning muffler. It's held in place by 3 studs with a fibre washer packer sandwiched between the pipe and muffler. Getting that in place does at least satisfy me about the clearance issues between the muffler and the side panel. Now to the badges. I'm strictly a D-badge kind of fella, but the rear frame carrier you see here is pretty much needed to finish off the frame loop, and I need some badge to put in it, so I went with the model correct LI1251. After a lick of black paint, the 2 halves can be assembled and bolted into place. Easier said than done, by the way, as I'd forgotten all about this when fitting the host of electrical parts onto the loop into the frame, which nicely obscured the badge's mounting points. Well done, old man. Another badge needed to fill a gap is this Casa horn casting item and clip. The first problem I found with this setup is the insane clamping force of the spring clip. This was easily relieved using some pliers. After chasing the main frame mounting points, I discovered the Casa spring clip doesn't actually even fit in the Casa horn casting. What was I saying about using the best parts available? Anyway, with the corners filed down and the clip slides nice into place and is bolted down. And that's it. I've gotten as far as I can with my scooter in my little spare room workshop. From now on, this project is going to involve petrol fumes, blue 2-stroke smoke, a loud high revving motor and paint fumes, which myself, my neighbours and especially my landlord will not be too pleased at. So, there you have it. After a few years of tinkering and throwing obscene amounts of money at this seemingly never-ending project, I feel like I've finally gotten somewhere. As mentioned, it's time to say goodbye to my little workshop, and the next time you see me and the scooter, we should be in a far more suitable location. I'll see you there.
7, 3, 2.